Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Danna Crawford, the Power Selling Mom, and you're tuning in to the Power Selling Podcast. Today, I'm really excited. You're going to enjoy this presentation with a special guest from Salt Lake City. His name is Ken Williams, and he is the owner of the website ssndd.com. How amazing is it that this man got a URL with 5 letters in it? So he's been running his business for a while. It's very interesting with storage war history, buying out estate sales and liquidation and warehouses and growing and warehouse tips and tricks. And he's also a List Perfectly user. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, Ken, I would love to hear how you got started selling on eBay.
Sure. So our account is pretty ancient. I think 98 is when we started on eBay, 99, somewhere around there. And it was actually my wife that started it. New mom of a 1-year-old at the time, 1 or 2-year-old, depending on when, huge into gymboree clothing. And she used eBay to both buy and resell gymboree clothing back in the day. And that lasted for, I don't know, we've got 3 kids and they're 4 or 5 years apart. So it lasted a while. And then it kind of went dormant for a few years and then decided I was ready for a change. So I was a VP for a company that was doing really well. I'd been with them for 10 years and I was just ready for something new. And talked to my son, who was probably about 18 at the time. I said, people buy storage units. It's kind of this weird thing. You want to try it? And he's like, sure. So we found one and it was $10. It was online. We didn't really know what we were getting into. It was a little 5x10 unit. And we went to clean it out. You couldn't really tell what was in it. It was just stuff. Nothing that really said this is worth a bunch of money or anything, but we were excited. We went and cleaned it out. It was just around the corner from where we live. It took us we didn't have a trailer or anything at the time. We just loaded it into the SUV. It took us 2 or 3 trips, brought it all back and unloaded it in the garage. And lo and behold, there was a lot of value in it. There was most of the value came from these big inflatables that we had. And that was actually where we realized we probably needed to start getting back on eBay. We had one in particular. It was this gigantic Christmas inflatable that was a Ferris wheel that actually moved and had stuffed animals. Well, stuffed, but they were inflatable. And I mean, that was one of our first big eBay sales back in the day. I think we sold it for $600 or $700
Nice.
for this inflatable. We had to learn how to do shipping all over again because we went from shipping clothing to shipping really large items. Yeah, getting back in to that mode. My wife was always afraid of shipping because she was used to putting it in an envelope, and I came from a background where I was like, we don't have to be afraid of shipping. We can ship whatever we want. But yeah, so that was about 7 years ago that we started down that path. To this date, that's been the biggest ROI I've had. I've spent $10 and we got something around $1,600, $1,700 out of the unit, I think.
Wow.
It wasn't that much work. It was a lot of fun, treasure hunting.
So that was the kickstart then to your
Correct.
selling journey.
Then we had some overlap. I'm still a VP and I'm just getting more and more burned out and ready for a big change. And I've got a son that's pretty excited about what we're doing. And so just said, all right, let's give it a go. We just kept expanding into what we were buying, learning more and more about storage units. You learn a lot of tough lessons with storage units, things that are good, things that are bad.
I bet. So how did this change your outlook on business?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, initially it was just this little side thing we were doing. And then I realized, there might be enough here that could keep the three of us being me, my son, and my wife, employed and enough to cover the bills. It would be a nice break from what I'm doing. Being a VP for a $100 million company is very different than being an owner for a storage unit resale business. But there's actually a lot of underlying principles that are the same, as far as I'm very in tune with the business side of things. I was an entrepreneur before as well. Before I worked for that company, I'd spent 10 years as a consultant. And so like the business side was a foreign concept for me, but it was very different for sure.
Wow. So tell me, so you went out and you bought storage units, or you opened a storage unit?
No, sorry. Yeah, we bought abandoned storage units is what I'm
okay.
meaning. Yeah.
So like Storage Wars kind of thing.
Exactly, like Storage Wars.
So did you get into situations like that? Buying storage units? Did you run into like crazy bidders? And
yeah, it's kind of funny. It's actually Storage Wars surprisingly isn't that far from reality.
Really?
Where it is a little far-fetched is the units aren't nearly as good as they make them out to be. So, TV, I'm certain there has to be a lot of planting or something, but the average unit is nowhere near as good as what they're showing. But the behaviors of people at local auctions are not that far removed. It's pretty funny. You definitely... Each person's got a very different personality, and they're all entertaining. It's actually pretty fun just to go and see how they all interact with each other.
Fun. So you would buy out these storage units, and then you would resell them on eBay or anywhere else?
Yeah, so eBay, it's actually kind of a funny story about eBay as well back then. I had been out of the eBay world for a few years, but in my mind, this is 2017, in my mind, eBay was kind of, you can sell whatever you want. Nobody really cares about the condition. Nobody cares about your listings and whatever. And I mean, I very quickly found out how wrong all of that was. I was like, actually, eBay's come a long way, and you do have to pay attention, and people actually do want good stuff. So we did sell a lot on eBay, but it was more niche items. Obviously, a lot of the stuff you're going to get out of a storage unit is going to be average household stuff that isn't going to be worth putting on eBay necessarily. So primarily, we actually started on Facebook. We had a Facebook group that we started, and we did auctions. So we would just say, all this stuff, the auctions end at 9 p.m. Whoever's the high bid at 9 p.m. Gets this item. And so we would do 10 or 20 items a day. We did that for a while. It wasn't necessarily every day. I mean, it definitely wasn't to start with.
Yeah.
But we kept growing and getting more stuff. And then eventually we realized Facebook just wasn't going to cut it, because there's no way to be... The process is just terrible. There's no way to be efficient at managing 100 auctions a day on Facebook. It is a very manual, time-consuming process. Every piece of it was. So basically, the Facebook group would get anything that we figured wasn't worth shipping, wasn't worth the time to put on eBay, and then eBay got the more niche items and the higher value items that were worth shipping. So Facebook, we were with Facebook. I mean, we still have a huge Facebook presence, but we stopped doing the auctions on Facebook many years ago. We moved to Proxybid. Proxybid was pretty nice for a while. At least it was automated. We could do imports and exports of spreadsheets and whatnot. But we decided ultimately Proxybid also wasn't the place for us. We moved our auctions to estatesales.org. Now, anybody that's looking to do a lot of auctions, estate sales, I highly, highly recommend. Great team there. Proxybid was the opposite. I couldn't discourage Proxybid enough. As far as support, as far as interface and everything. But eventually we moved from, we used estate sales for, I mean, we were doing 100 auctions a day, 100 line items a day, every day of the week. I should back up a minute, because we started all this out of our garage. And we would take stuff out of the garage, put it on the kitchen counter, take pictures of it, and then put it back in the garage on a shelf, waiting for it to be sold or picked up. If we weren't shipping it, then people were just coming to our house to pick up their winnings. And eventually we said, well, that's fine, but my wife would like to be able to park in the garage again. So we said, well, we should dabble, because the problem with storage units is that there's actually not that many good ones to make it worth trying to support 3 people full time. So we said, well, let's look into liquidated inventory.
Okay.
So we bought some pallets, we bought some boxes of stuff, and we said, yeah, this might work. So then we actually made a big investment. We bought 7 pallets that were delivered to the house.
Wow, 7.
Yeah, 7 pallets dumped into the driveway. We didn't have a pallet jack, and we just moved it all by hand into the garage and then processed it all. And so now the garage is very full. It's 75% storage unit stuff. Well, it's probably 50-50 at this point. 50-50 storage unit, 50-50 liquidation. And my wife's like, I'd like to be able to park in the garage this winter. So we looked for a warehouse. We found a warehouse, 2,500 square feet. It was actually 1,200 square feet. We moved in June, and within a month I said, hey, that space next door is empty. Can we have it too and knock the wall down? And she said, yep. So within a month we moved to 2,500 square feet so that we had room to process everything. And it's this time that we gave up on, or that we moved to proxy bid, and then it was probably 6 months or a year before we moved to estate sales. And in between all of that, we're selling on Marketplace, we're selling on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, I mean. So it really kind of depends. We were doing a bunch of research on every item. Where will we get the most out of this?
So you shifted away from buying storage units and focused more on direct sales, and
for a really long time we were doing both. The storage units is the fun part. That's the treasure hunt. Unfortunately, to keep the company alive and to pay for all the overhead of rent and all that good stuff, it's hard to do that with storage units. So yeah, we slowly shifted towards liquidated inventory. The thing about liquidated inventory is that the processes can be really streamlined. We buy manifested information. I've created a database website for us that we use that makes things super efficient. We process everything using the database, so we're able to import a manifest. We know exactly what we've got. We've got UPCs that are part of the manifest. We've got titles. And so we can very quickly find a website. We can build a description off of it. All that goes into our database. And then we use List Perfectly to cross-post wherever it makes sense. So we have a Shopify site. All of our stuff will go on our site, but depending on what it is, it'll also go on eBay. It'll go on Mercari. We have another site that's local for classifieds that unfortunately List Perfectly doesn't support, so we have to do that one manually. But aside from that, the List Perfectly being able to manage all that is really huge for us. That was a big game changer. We've been with List Perfectly about a year and a half, almost 2 years now. It'll be 2 years probably in May, if I had to guess, May or June. And then the most recent changes with List Perfectly this year, I can't believe how much more effective they are and how much more efficient it makes all of us. So very excited. There's been a lot of bugs through this the last couple of months, but the team, List Perfectly has been pretty quick to get on it. They've been the underlying infrastructure changes was huge. I can understand that from a developer point of view. And I understand what it takes to make a change like that. So, but at this point, it's just amazing how effective it makes us. So yeah, that's the big difference between storage units and liquidated inventory. Is liquidated inventory, we have a clear, this is the thing, and it retails for $60, and we can sell it for $40, and it goes onto our shelf. The other thing that I failed to mention is eventually we outgrew the 2,500 square feet. So about 3 years ago, we moved into a warehouse that's 14,000 square feet. For the first year or two that we were here, we were doing about 50-50 storage units and liquidations. We eventually realized that, unfortunately, the storage units just weren't making a big enough dent into the overhead to continue them. So we will keep an eye out. And at this point, it's been 18 months since I bought a storage unit. But instead of storage units, what we will do is sometimes keep an eye for collections or estates. That's a little bit better deal for us. We can offer some help with people that are trying to get rid of their inventory. That way, I say their inventory, it's our inventory, but their items.
That's great. Yeah.
So realistically, 80% of the business, if not more, is liquidated inventory. The other 20% is going to be collections or estates that we'll get word of and we'll pick up.
So do people call you and ask you to do consignment?
Yeah, they do. And personally, I'm not a fan of consignment. I'd rather just buy the inventory straight out.
Right. Yep.
We do periodically do consignment depending on what the item is, but it's pretty rare for us. Instead, I'd rather just come in and say, here's some money, let us take it, we'll take care of it, and then you don't have to worry about all of the mess of consignment.
Right.
I know a lot of people do really well with consignment, and that's great, but we've tried it and we just prefer the buyout method.
No, I agree. I'm a consignment seller, and I know I wouldn't be if I had the storage facility and the warehouse, and because I would rather buy people out. And if they have a small collection, I try to buy them out, but otherwise it's kind of a losing battle. If they have some high-end items and they know, no, I'm not going to take $10 for these items, so we have to do consignment. So it has its pros and cons, but if you don't have the space, to buy someone out, it makes it easy to liquidate a little at a time.
So in our early days of buying storage units at the house, we're still pretty green. We're still learning what has value, what doesn't have value. Most of the items, I mean, we feel like we're getting some knowledge. It turns out we don't have any knowledge still in retrospect. But I opened up a box. The process at the time was basically grab a box from the garage, bring it in, take pictures of it, make a listing. We were running the business off of Google Sheets at the time, so we just added to this system there, put a price on it. And I picked up this doll that just looked like a doll. I didn't know anything about it. It had some, green eyes, which was kind of unique. It's a blonde doll, and it's obviously old, and it's got a string on the back of the head, and I just assumed it would make a noise or something, so I pulled the string. Nothing seems to happen. I set the doll down. I don't know. I had to take a break for something. Something interrupted me. I come back, and I'm like, I swear this doll had green eyes, and now it's got orange eyes. What in the world? And it was pretty freaky, really. Like, this old doll that is all of a sudden changing color eyes creeps you out for just a second. But the long story short, it was a Kenner Blythe doll from the 70s. We found on the head or on the neck somewhere, there's a copyright. We did some research on eBay, and sure enough, man, that thing had a ton of value. We put it on eBay. I want to say we sold it for $700-800, something like that.
Nice.
Ended up selling it it was in decent condition, but we ended up selling it to a collector in Japan, and she bought it to restore it, and sure enough, she sent pictures a while later of the restored product. It did look quite improved, and she probably, I don't know if she was collecting it or if she was restoring it to sell for more, but there's a huge market for Blythe dolls, and apparently it's a thing today still, but the ones that have the most value are the Kenner Blythe dolls from the 70s that are pretty sought after. You can just look them up on eBay and you'll still see that they're going for even more when I looked it up this last week.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I've seen the haunted dolls and the possessed dolls, and when you first started telling the story, I could just picture the reaction of seeing the orange eyes. Thought you had something
exactly, a possessed doll. So that string on the back of its head, in case that wasn't obvious, is to change the color of its eyes, and she's got 4 different colors, like green, blue, orange, and purple, or something like that, and it just cycles through all of them.
Never seen it. I've never seen it. Wow,
and that's what makes the storage unit business fun, is that you just don't know what you're going to get from one day to the next, and what the big treasure is going to be. So,
and you never stop learning. That's the fun.
Absolutely. So that is very true. That's also true in the liquidation business, but on a much smaller scale. The liquidation business, you're just buying what Walmart and Costco can sell. So you're not, that's what we do. So you're not learning it nearly as much as you do in the storage unit business, where you're getting a huge history every time you buy one.
Yeah. So I heard that you managed a large die-cast card collection. So what was that like?
Correct. Yeah. So that would be one of the collections I was talking about earlier that we invest in periodically. Somebody hit us up and said, we've got a bunch of die-cast cars. And I said, great. This was a huge learning experience for us. Didn't know too much about them. We went to their storage unit and they just had box after box of die-cast cars. Most of them were 1/18 scale, which I mean is this big as opposed to the little 1/64 Hot Wheels. It was misleading how much was going to be in these boxes. So we fitted in 2 trailers. Our trailer is I think a 5x7 trailer, and it might even been 2.5 trailers. And when we brought them all in and put them in our warehouse, our warehouse is split in 2. So half of the warehouse is for sales, and the other half is for processing. And it took up just a huge amount of space for us to organize and sort through it all. It took us months to process all that. The vast majority of those cars sold on eBay and Mercari. It was probably, I'll just make up some numbers that are going to be pretty close. It was probably 60% eBay, 25% Mercari, and then 15% that we sold in store.
Okay.
So the collectors loved it. And we actually, one of the cool things about buying something like that is that you kind of get to know some people through the process.
Sure.
So people would be hitting us up. Have you got this? Have you got that? I see you're listing more. When's the next time that you're going to have more inventory listed? People that were just following our accounts like hawks, seeing when we were going to post something so they could snatch it up. And then in person, like what I learned about diecast collectors is they're very interested in their hobby. They love to share about their hobby, but they're also just really good people. Met a lot of really cool people through the process, both in person and online. And then since then, I mean, kind of niche. I've actually bought more collections here and there. I picked up a really small batch just Saturday. Somebody came in and said, I've got some diecast cars. I said, great. Put them in later that day, paid them, and yeah.
Great.
So it's kind of cool to get that kind of or that kind of knowledge on something really specific.
Yeah, you're almost like the expert. I mean, you could even just advertise that, as you learn each market of a state, you could just advertise, put ads out there or social media posts just for those items, and people probably have them everywhere. They're all over Florida, I know.
Yep.
But now I'll send them to you.
Yes, please do. If we can get it all on a pallet and shipped to me, that'd be great.
There you go.
Storage units, we've talked about all the goods of storage units, but there's definitely some bad to be learned. We've had some interesting experiences. One of the units that we bought, we didn't learn to recognize smell as an important factor until this unit that we bought. Smell? Okay. So like you can smell a storage unit and get an idea for it, believe it or not. And the most important smell that we learned from this particular storage unit is the smell of mice.
Mice.
Yes. So we were emptying the storage unit, and I mean, it is kind of crazy. It's kind of like a house. You go to different houses, and they all have their own smell, if you will,
true.
Good or bad.
True.
Storage units are very similar. So this one had a smell. We didn't think too much of it. This is early in our career, but yeah, we're emptying out the storage unit, and then we look up, and like 4 feet in, there's 2 or 3 sets of mice just looking at us. They're just out of reach, and I'm like, oh god. Well, this changes what we're doing here, because the last thing I want to do is bring mice home, right?
Yeah.
So it became a different approach on that one. We were opening every single thing, shaking it out, making sure there wasn't anything in it, putting it in the trailer, and then we literally left the door open when we went to empty the first load. And I was like, if we leave it open, hopefully those mice leave.
Yeah.
We came back. We never could find them. They never showed up at our house. So
thank goodness.
We're lucky there. But from that point on, we knew exactly what the smell of mice smelled like, and we were able to avoid ever having that problem again on future units. So,
oh my gosh, I can't imagine. And just, was your wife with you?
No, it was me and my son, and we must have mentioned it to her at some point in time. But there's some things that you just work through, and then later you're like, by the way, don't get too freaked out.
Yeah, I mean, you could run into cockroaches, all kinds of things, and things living in boxes.
Yep. No cockroaches, only the one mice unit. I mean, we bought hundreds of units over time, and that was definitely one of the worst ones.
Wow.
We've actually been pretty good. Like you, for us anyway, we were pretty hesitant to invest in anything that looked any kind of bad. And so the looks are pretty telling, but the smell is an important factor. And unfortunately, when you're buying online, so many of these places, the auctions are online now. You're missing out on that important factor. So,
well, can't you smell that smell? It's like, oh my goodness. You had the honor to be a part of the eBay Open last year. So share with us a bit about that.
Yeah. So,
group.
Yeah, it's been kind of cool. The last year, we've actually been doing quite a few different things with eBay. We're in Salt Lake. eBay's got a call center here. So we've actually been down to the facility quite a few times, but the most recent time I think was in September. Jeremy Sanchez has been the leader of that, and I've kind of been a co-leader, but really he's done all the work and the sounding board for him. But we met in September. I think there was probably 10 or 12 of us. We met at the eBay call center, and we just talked about how we're using eBay, what we do. It's a great group. We haven't done anything since September, which is that's a shame because it's a great group. Those meetups are huge. I'm a huge fan of local meetings where you can get to know people, you can share detailed stories and really learn from each other. We will be doing that again. I don't have anything scheduled right now, but I'll get with Jeremy and we'll get something scheduled in the next, I'd probably say 6 to 8 weeks would probably be realistic.
Sure.
And so, yeah, if you're in the Salt Lake area and you want to meet and talk about how to do business, how to do eBay, or if you've got some tips and tricks you want to share with the group, I mean, we're all about learning. So
yeah, absolutely. And I love an excuse to come to Salt Lake. So beautiful. But
it is beautiful.
It is. Yeah. List Perfectly was a sponsor of the eBay Open last year. And I know that they love sharing swag and having, doing whatever they can. You know, if they want to send something to help out your meetup group, we will. I can get that set up as well. So we love helping and doing what we can.
So we had a bunch of swag at that first meetup, both from List Perfectly and from eBay, and gave a bunch of stuff away. I actually still have a bunch of that swag in my warehouse here, so we can absolutely keep using it.
Great, yeah.
I just kept it to the side. So
that's right. Let us know when you run out. We'll be sure to send more.
I actually have a really funny story about that meeting that I totally forgot about. So List Perfectly had, I want to say, a $50 Visa gift card that we did a random drawing for.
Yes,
there was I think they're sisters. They definitely knew each other for a long time, and I'm pretty sure they're sisters. And the one said, every time we go to something like this, she always wins. And sure enough, she's the one that won the gift card. And she called it way before we even did the drawing that she was going to win. And sure enough, she just got the lucky draw.
Lucky woman. I'd want to hang out with her. So
yeah, no kidding.
Ever pick me up a lottery ticket or two. That's amazing. Great. So you had a good turnout. You had a good time and had some appetizers and.
Yep, exactly. Good. Yeah, eBay sponsored all that, so it was nice to have some good food and sit around.
Well, I'm excited for you to kick off, a new adventure with the meetup group, and we're here.
That was our first meetup, and so like I said, we got to get going on our second one. So
Sherry, that was on my podcast last time, it was her first meetup too, in Boulder, Colorado. So eBay loves to support the meetup. We said we learn from each other. Nobody knows everything, and no matter how long we've been selling, there's always new things to learn. It's one of your favorite features of using List Perfectly.
Yeah, so the most important feature List Perfectly introduced recently is basically the ability to make sure things aren't where they're supposed to be, or that they are where they're supposed to be. And what I mean by that is, at least probably every month or so historically, I would do a full reconciliation of everything. I would compare our site. We'd do an inventory. I'd compare what's on Shopify. I'd compare on eBay, on Facebook. I forgot List Perfectly also crosses to Facebook for us, which is huge. I knew there was another site. So anyway, Facebook, Shopify, eBay, Mercari. I'm doing this manual process. We have 1,500, 2,000 items, and every 4 to 8 weeks, I'm having to go through and manually reconcile all of them to make sure, because the last thing that you want, especially on eBay, is to sell something you don't have.
Right.
We learned that lesson the hard way. And now List Perfectly has the issue finder, and it is huge to find those things that are hanging out there, things that you thought were listed on eBay that aren't, or things that shouldn't be on eBay anymore, or Facebook or Shopify, Mercari, etc. It's a huge time saver to me.
Yeah.
The other thing that's tied to that is the ability to just mark things sold as quick as you can. So for us, we have our in-house store, brick and mortar store, I mean. And so anything that we sell on there, as soon as we sell it, basically between customers, pull up List Perfectly, mark sold, and it's marked sold everywhere. You don't have to go search for it on eBay, search for it on Mercari, search for it on Facebook, search for it on Shopify. Like, you bring it up in List Perfectly, mark sold, done.
Done. Yep. And now it has auto delist.
We're huge on process here. I've got a great team. Wonderful team. There's 6 of us currently, and every single person knows every role. They all have their expertise, but anybody can step in for anybody else.
Nice.
And we spend a lot of time on process improvement. Anytime anybody has an idea, then we talk about it, we vet it, implement it if it makes sense. It's about time, with all the changes with List Perfectly, it's about time we kind of take a step back and re-examine our overall process again, because List Perfectly has changed a bunch in the last 3 months.
For me, as an eBay seller, I'm selling on all the platforms because I have a lot of fashion. So it's amazing. It's like, I love watching it on auto delist from all of them, because I'll be like, did it do it for sure? And I'll go look, and it sure did. And so it pulls them off of Vestiaire, Depop, Grailed, Mercari. And then I have stuff on Etsy too. So a lot of those collectibles you should be having on Etsy.
Yeah, we looked at Etsy. We did a little bit on Etsy, and then it never clicked for us. I'd be happy to look at it again. I don't know. It's been more than 3 years, because it was at the old warehouse when we experimented with Etsy.
But it's so cheap. It's so cheap to have your item over there. I mean, you pay what, 20 cents? You know, so it's so cheap to have it sit there. You know, it's like cheap advertising. That's the way
I'm happy to look into that again, because it has been years since we looked into it.
Sure. Yeah, especially the collectibles and the rare things. And I got into the habit of, because my brand is called Power Selling Mom.
Right.
And so I would have my Etsy Power Selling Mom. And so I was like, I don't care if I don't sell anything. It's just advertising Power Selling Mom. And so to me, it was a cheap advertising platform, you know? But as far as your business goes, I'm sure you're up on top of branding and all of that. So it's another place for your brand to be, your logo to be, and, you know, more opportunity to be seen.
I keep trying to sit up to get my shirt logo in there. So yeah, I'm aware.
Yeah. So what's the name of your brand?
Our company name is Storage Deals and Daily Deals. You can find us. I mean, if you search that, you're going to find our website. It's super easy. ssndd.com. 5-letter domain is pretty rare. Pretty happy to have that.
Yes, congrats on that. Wow.
And then we are Storage Deals on eBay, Storage Deals on Mercari. We've got a Facebook group for Storage Deals and Daily Deals. We have a Shopify website. So, yeah.
Are you on Instagram?
We are on Instagram. My wife does all the Instagram stuff.
Great.
She's got a huge following there. So, definitely. Also, Storage Deals and Daily Deals on Instagram.
Okay. I will look you up. That's awesome. Yeah. So, okay, Ken, do you have any final words?
Words. This is, it's a challenge for sure, but it's a fun challenge. So, you know, being self-employed means, on the one hand, you have to do everything, but on the other, you know, you're getting a lot of reward. You're your own boss. You set your own hours. It just happens to be that your own hours end up being 80 hours a week. But they're your own. You can have flexibility in those 80 hours. But yeah, I would also say getting the right team is huge. It took us a while to this group that we've had right now. We've had for years, and it's mostly friends and family. But if they're not blood related to us at this point. They basically are. We hang out a lot. We play a lot of games, and I love my team. They're just they're just the best. So I can't understate how important having a good support team is, and then just always keeping your eye on the future. What are you going to do? What are you going to change? We have regular, every year we go through a strategic planning process. We stay on top of that throughout the year. Here's all the stuff that we said we needed to look at doing. You mentioned Etsy earlier. I'll add Etsy to the list because we do need to look into that. So yeah, just always be learning. The groups, whether it's your local meetup that we're talking about with eBay or online, there's 1,000 forums out there. I'm on a whole bunch of them. I'm just always reading and always learning what people are doing. You mentioned it earlier. Nobody knows everything. Right. So using all the resources you can to improve yourself and improve your business is what it's all about.
Yep. Never stop learning or you die.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule, and good luck with your meetup group.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was great. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much to Ken for joining us today. And thank you to you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. You're listening to the Power Selling Podcast. I'm Danna Crawford, the Power Selling Mom. And this is sponsored by List Perfectly, your online resource tool for resellers to cross-post, cross-list, and manage their inventory online. Until next time, have an awesome online selling day. Bye.